continuing with our Qt Creator session now, and now our first two presenters have teamed up to deliver the presentation about the plugin development. So, welcome, and I'm looking forward to another interesting talk.
Hello again. So I'm pleased to see quite a few faces from my last presentation. So I hope I wasn't too horribly boring. So again, for those that have not been here before, my name is Tobias. This is my co-worker.
This is Arindam. We are from the Berlin team. We are basically doing Qt Creator. There are a couple of guys I see.
Cornelius?
Is this not working?
It's working, but you can move more with this one. How do you turn it on?
Hello? Yeah. So we have a couple more Qt Creator guys, Maurice and Fauzi. Anyone else over here? No. So what we do in the Berlin office is we are working on Qt Creator, of course. We're also working on installer framework. We are working on Windows 8 RT port and a whole lot of exciting R&D projects that will soon see the light of day. And yeah.
Well, let's get started.
Yeah.
So
first,
I can click here.
Okay.
It's remote controlled. So first, Qt Creator is completely based on plugins. So if you check up there, the red circled number, that's the Qt Creator binary. And I'm pretty sure everybody here will agree that close to 80 kilobytes is a bit small for an IDE. And of course, that's because all the functionality is in plugins. But on the other hand, we don't consider Qt Creator to be a rich client platform like other integration development environments out there. So that's actually what happens if you run Qt Creator without any plugin. So it complains bitterly about the core plugin being missing. So what we think of Qt Creator is it's a great platform for an IDE, but it's nothing generic for it's not a generic platform for just any plugin-based environment that you want to work on. So that's actually a screenshot of Qt Creator with only the core plugin loaded. So as you can see, it's already pretty well targeted to integrated development environments. The menu is already populated. It already has all the menu entries for the editors. To manage those. It already has the editing mode, it has a sidebar, it has the progress bar down in the rightmost corner. So it's already, it's not a complete IDE, of course, because all the functionality is missing, but most of the infrastructure is already there.
Quick question. How many people over here use Qt Creator or actually do Qt Creator plugin development? Oh, fairly good number.
Cool. Even Maurice raises hand. So the first thing I want to talk about is the extension system. That's actually not really Qt Creator because it's a library we use, and it's one of several libraries we actually include in the Qt Creator sources. And this is the library basically housing the whole plugin system we are using. So all the plugin management, the plugins themselves, the interfaces, all that is in source libs extension system. So if you want to take a look at the code, that's where you need to go. This library basically covers plugins also with dependencies between plugins. And it offers extension points for command line arguments, which then are passed or shown in most. The biggest feature here is that these show up in the help text of the main application. In addition to that, there's a object pool. Well, we are Qt people, so it's of course a Q object pool. And that's does several things. So basically it helps managing the life cycle of objects which belong to a plugin, and it allows plugins to register objects and then retrieve objects based on type or name later. And we use that extensively all over Qt Creator. So basically what we do is some plugin defines some interface. Then all the other plugins that depend on that are initialized, do something, throw objects implementing that interface into the object pool, and later on we will retrieve the objects with that interface and do something with them. And finally, this library contains a couple of UI elements used to manage plugins. So I can actually show those. Where's my Qt Creator? Ah, here it is. So basically, the UI you get here in help about plugins, all that is part of the extension system library, like the categories and the settings and all that stuff. So you can get details about a plugin here, which has some more information, which is actually too big for this screen, which should not happen. So
one thing that is interesting over here is to look at the dependencies.
Mm-hmm.
So often if you want to optimize your Qt Creator startup time, you could probably disable plugins that you do not normally use. But yeah, interesting to see the dependencies over here.
Yeah. So let's head back. And how this whole thing actually works is plugins are of course shared object files, but we don't want to randomly load any shared object files in certain places. So we require an additional file, which is called the plugin spec. That's an XML file. That's a almost complete one here. And it's basically gives a couple of information on the plugin. The first one up in the top, plugin name, is of course the name of the plugin. Then there's a version, which is the current version number of the plugin itself, and a compat version, which is the version of the plugin with the lowest version of a plugin with that using the same API. So basically the lowest version number that is compatible with the one we have right now. Is that understandable?
So basically think about this as something 3.0.1 is compatible with something 3.0.0, which means that it at least supports that many APIs that 3.0.0 supports. So you may have some additions, but at least it will support those APIs.
So if there are questions, please just raise your hand and we will get a mic to you and then we can just discuss it. So, no questions? Great. Do you want to have some?
There's also in most plugins a variable where there's just the actual version used or something like that.
Oh, that's actually the plugin spec.in file, which is basically the template which is used to create the final one.
So is it recommended to use just the template file versions?
Yes, that will work, but if you... Well, by default, we put the same version number everywhere, but because the worst case scenario is it's not compatible. But if you know it's compatible, please use the lowest compatible version there. So in addition to that, there's basically a couple of metadata fields like who wrote the plugin, what's the copyright, the license text, all the stuff you can see when you look at the details of the plugin here. Let's go here. Well, all that information here is taken from the plugin spec file. And so, and then finally, in this, I cannot really reach that there. So, run here. So then we have this area here, the dependency list, which tells Qt Creator which other plugins are needed for this plugin to function. So basically, that's we always put in the complete list of everything that's required in directly or indirectly required there. So we do have a really bushy dependency graph. And finally, we have the arguments list, which is command line arguments, which this plugin understands and adds to the application, which can then be used to configure the plugin. Or there's, for example, we have a command line argument in Qt Creator called presentation mode, and if you turn that on, then all the whenever you hit a keyboard shortcut, a small pop-up will show what you just did. And yeah, and that's basically the complete plugin spec file. There's not much else to it. Questions about it? Yes, back there?
The version number given in the dependency list, is this the version number which is given in the version number in the first line, or the
It's
compatibility
a compat
number?
version, actually.
Yeah.
So that's why we have the two version numbers there. That's a very good point, and I forgot to mention that. Thank you for bringing it up. So this is basically the dependency graph we have. As I said, it's already pretty bushy. And if you trim out the indirect dependencies, that's basically what you get. So you see pretty clearly then that it's a directed acyclic graph. So basically we have a core plugin at the bottom, and then all the other plugins depend directly or indirectly on that one, and more plugins. So you have some plugins that provide functionality to other plugins, and so leaf plugins which actually implement most of the functionality which is not infrastructure for other plugins. Questions? No, great. So how does this extension system work? So what it does first is it reads all the .plugin spec files in a certain set of directories, and then it starts to order the plugins in such a way so that it has a list of plugins so that whenever a plugin is so
it basically orders the plugins depending on the dependency list.
Yeah, no, that's what I wanted to say. Sorry. Then it proceeds to load the plugin, going from the core, in our case, the core plugin, so the very lowest in the tree, up to the very top. In our case, that's the welcome plugin. And that basically runs the constructor of all the plugins. In the next phase, we have an initialize phase. Again, it goes from the core plugin to the very topmost plugin or leafmost plugin. And in that phase, it calls a method called initialize with some command line arguments, error strings, and all that. And in this phase, the plugin is required to, in the Qt Creator case at least, to put its objects into the objects pool and populate all those things. Yes?
Just a quick question. Question for understanding the extensions initialized. This also goes from core to welcome. Or?
Yes.
Not from welcome to core.
No, it goes from core.
Up and then it goes down. So it means that if you have child dependencies, so the child dependencies would have been resolved and initialized, and then when you're going back to the parent would know.
Extensions initialized, I'm new to this, is like the confirmation or the signal for completion.
Or you could.
No, it's basically a separate phase. So
Okay.
So the first, it basically loads all the plugins, and that basically triggers the constructors of all the plugins. When all those are done, and when it went through the list once, it will head back to the head of the list and traverse the list again, calling initialize on each and every plugin.
So the way think about can you go back to the dependency chart?
Of course.
So basically, initialize is called from core to the leaf, and then it has to come down because it might so happen that the parent has some dependency on the child, or the way around. So it basically goes back to core and then calls extensions initialize on each of them, and then we have the third phase.
So in initialize, we basically populate the object pool. And the next phase, when we reach the topmost plugin, we basically go back down again and traverse the list in the other way around. And at that point, you know that all the plugins, when extensions initialized is called on one plugin, it knows that all its parents are in a fine state. So it can go in the object pool, grab all the objects from there, and do register functions there and do stuff like that. So that goes down from the welcome, in our case, the welcome screen, back down to the core. And the core plugin, the very last thing the core plugin will do in extensions initialize is actually bring up the UI. So please whenever you write a plugin, make sure its constructor and its initialize method, as well as its extension initialize method, is fast, because that directly affects the startup time of QtCreator. After the UI is up, we have another phase, which is called delayed initialize, which is basically delayed by a couple of milliseconds, like half a second or something, and then it will again ask all plugins to do, or give all plugins the opportunity to do additional later delayed initialization, which something. So please do anything that doesn't need to happen in the to bring up the UI in that phase. But there's a pitfall here. Delayed initialize is run in the UI thread, so please do not do too heavy lifting here either, but just start threads that do the heavy lifting, because otherwise UI will block.
Questions?
Let's continue. Let's do some demo here. Where is it? So what we let me close this instant here, because otherwise I might get confused. QtCreator has basically a way of profiling its startup. So to get that as where is my creator? I use the current one. QtCreator with the profile option. That will produce a lot of output, and let's go through that from the top. Something is not happy here. Where does it start? See, it produces a lot of output, but that's because my screen is a bit... Can I reduce the size of the font a bit? Yeah, that's what I'm trying to do, but it doesn't want me to do that. Can you still read this? So, yeah, then it's... I just run it again, so I can actually find this spot where it starts. And what this does is basically it provides timing information for its startup. So what you see here is that profiling started, so the manager of all the plugins is up, and then it starts to call load library and actually load the plugin and call the constructor of the core module at 0 milliseconds after profiling started, and 36 milliseconds later it's back, and then it goes to find, locator, text editor, and all the other plugins. So that's basically the loading phase. And here, once it's at welcome, it jumps back to the front of the list and calls initialize plugin on core, which is fortunately much faster than the loading. And again, it will go through the list from core to, in our case, welcome. And let's go here. That's the initialize plugin phase, and it's calling initialize extensions. That's the next phase. And as you can see, it starts with a welcome plugin here. So, and then goes through the list again in the other direction. And we do have some problem here with my setup, but let's just ignore that for now. And at this point, 500 milliseconds after startup, the UI is showing. So, and afterwards, we have the delayed initialize phase, which again goes through all the plugins from welcome to core. And finally, we have a summary of all the startup times. So total, it's 600 milliseconds until Creator is fully loaded. So that's pretty okay, I think, for an IDE. And if you write a plugin and it shows up here in the total summary at the bottom, please do some profiling and optimize your plugin, because then it's slowing down the startup significantly. Oh. Questions so far? Okay. So now that we talked about how this whole thing works, let's look a bit at the interfaces. The first thing that's important is, of course, the plugin interface itself, and we have a class called IPlugin for that. And these are basically the most important methods there, and that's, of course, initialize, extensions initialized, and delayed initialize, which we already covered. So let's go on. The profiling output is what we just saw. I just wanted to have a slide on it so you can actually look up the command again. And the next thing the plugin system or the extension system does is it provides an object pool. And this is the interface to interact with that object pool. So the first thing you can do is add an object, you can remove it again, you can get all objects, and you can get object of a certain type, or just the first object in the pool of a certain type, and you can get it by name and class name. Questions about that? You were way more awake in my last presentation. What's up, guys?
Looks like lunch is around the corner.
Yeah, everybody's waiting for lunch. Okay, so, and that's the second part of the object pool interface is actually on the plugin itself. Well, that's basically just convenience methods. So usually you will register objects in the plugin, and it's pretty convenient to just call add object on the plugin itself and not going to the plugin manager, which actually does all the handling. Another convenience we have there is add auto released object, which in the destructor of the plugin itself will make sure all the plugins that are added as auto released objects will be deleted before the plugin goes out of scope.
So one thing to add over here, basically you can think about there. So you can either have a hard dependency on another library or another plugin, or if you have a soft dependency, then you can use the object pool to query on that particular object in the object pool and then call a function on it. So you would basically call a well-defined interface and you would call a function. For example, in the profiler, what we do is we query an object in the Linux remote Linux plugin if it exists, and then if we have to do profiling, we would say what is the device. We'd ask for the device, etc., and then do profiling, some things like that. So you need not go into circles and with the dependency chain, so you can avoid certain things. Of course, the object pool. Try not to use the object pool for singleton objects. That's what we discussed some time back. But yeah, that's do not use it just because it has an add auto released object. Do not do that. Try to manage it on your own.
Yeah, as a rule of thumb, do not put objects in the object pool which don't need to go there for other plugins to find. Because the bigger the object pool gets, the more overhead it is, of course, to retrieve individual objects. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about, the extension system, which is just a library we use. And that's the point I wanted to switch over to QtCreator itself. And what we actually promise. And in 2.8 and before, we basically promise nothing. So there's no promises of compatibility between even patch level releases, but in fact there usually is, but we don't promise it. But the good news is, starting with QtCreator 3.0, which is about to be released with Qt 5.2, we actually provide a couple of guarantees. And the first one is we will not change APIs after a beta release, which is really important if you have a third-party plugin and want to have that, make sure that it works with a new upcoming version. Because then you can, with a beta release, you can just download it and test your plugin and make sure it still works, which you couldn't rely on earlier. And the next thing we promise is source and binary compatibility between patch level releases. We don't promise that between major version upgrades, and we don't promise it even for minor releases. So just so that's completely clear. Questions? So let's get started and just create a plugin. Because Creator is a really cool...
We have a question over here.
Hmm?
A question?
What? A question? Great.
Just a quick question about documentation. Do you promise anything about that?
We promise to work on it.
Oh, great.
No, quite serious. Quite seriously, it was. We are aiming to have more stable APIs, and we do make those promises because we think with 3.0 we are in a state where we can actually make promises and where stuff won't change all the time anymore. And that's the point where you actually seriously can start doing documentation, because if it changes every 2 weeks, it doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, okay, but because maybe this is I will just ask because we've been working on making some like editors and new project types and so on, and it was hard to find any documentation. So basically, what we mostly have done is looking at other plugins and look at the code, do something similar. But do there exist any documentation?
We do have an extension manual, and I do have a link to that in my presentation.
Okay.
It's not perfect, so.
No, okay. Yeah. I will look at it.
Yeah, documentation is definitely an area we need to work on. I agree with that. So let's get started with writing a plugin. So we are an integrated development environment, so of course we do have a wizard. And that's hidden here in libraries, Qt Creator plugin. And there are a couple of pitfalls here. So you need to make sure the project name and the directory name match. So best use lowercase characters only. So let's call it test plugin, and I can't type here. I'm going for a desktop thing, and my plugin, I will just call it test plugin. I'm fine with my company for the purposes of this demonstration. And I need to provide the Qt Creator sources, which in my case are in source creator and the Qt Creator build I want to work with. And in my case, that's in build creator clang. A tip here, I strongly recommend not using the Qt Creator you're actually working with to develop the plugin, because a plugin is loaded into your address space. If you do something stupid, your creator will crash. And of course, it's a pain to restart the creator you are working on to get the plugin loaded. So have a separate build of Qt Creator, use that. I don't want version control now, so I just go for finish. And that brings up my test plugin. And let me go to the header. And that implements extension system IPlugin, basically just as expected. It has a constructor, destructor, and initialize and extension initialize methods. Well, those are the methods we just discussed. It doesn't bother to implement delayed initialization because it won't do anything anyway. So why implement it? So let's go back. And the interesting thing here is, let me hide this. I'll come back to this methods here later when we have discussed a bit about the infrastructure we provide. But the fun thing is you can just, oh damn it, where's my compiler gone? It worked before I restarted it. Oh, I know. Let me run my setup script here, because that will get me a creator that actually works and that I have tested for the presentation, and not some random thing I just fired up to show something. Where did my plugin go? Where's my test plugin? Okay, so let's just try it again. So that was libraries, Qt Creator plugin. So I'm rubbing it in now, sorry. Test plugin. I just care about the debug build for now. I wanted to call it test plugin.
We have a question.
If I want to work on an existing plugin that ships with a creator, like for instance the CMake plugin, do I just open the profile of that plugin, or
just load QtCreator and work on it in the entirety, because you have dependency on other plugins, and it's really way easier to just look up those dependencies and follow the symbols if you have the whole of QtCreator loaded.
Okay.
So I need to set up the build directory again. Sorry for that mess up here. It's the wrong one. This one. Choose next. Finish. And now I should be able to start the creator. It doesn't know the executable, which is of course in bin QtCreator fire. Oh great, it worked. It worked just before my last presentation. That's when I tried it last. Yeah, usually you should have QtCreator come up and have the new plugin listed in here. It doesn't do anything interesting anyway, so the only thing I could show is that it's in there.
So let's talk about the reason why your plugin name should be the same as your directory name.
Yeah, if it doesn't load, that's the plugin name. But it doesn't build if the plugin name is not the same as the project name. So the loading is fine then. So I'm sorry for that, but let's just assume it worked and get back to the presentation.
We have a question.
Yeah, question. I'm curious about your configuration management. You say that you should use a separate version of QtCreator to do the development.
Yes.
But what do you do once you're finished? Do you clone the QtCreator repositories twice? And what do you do later on when you have finished your plugin, but you want to synchronize with the upstream?
I personally develop my... The wizard creates a project which you basically could just drop in the plugins folder of QtCreator, and then adjust the QtCreator plugins.profile or plugins.qbs file, and just make that subdirectory known, and then it should build as part of QtCreator. So it's a bit of work, but it's manageable. What I used to develop on is basically I have one repository of QtCreator, and I do a shadow build for my work. For the QtCreator I actually work in, and another shadow build for the one with the plugin I'm testing.
The way that I normally work is I have to separate. I basically clone twice, or basically I have a reference. One is the main clone, and the other I just refer to the first one. So it's much more easier, and then I work on different branches. I just can push it upstream from the second one, from the one that's developed, that's on my dev branch.
Some tips that to avoid confusion, you can actually change the color of the UI. So that's how my usual work environment looks like. So that's the hot one, and if I do something there, it's dangerous. The other one that stays gray, and that's the safe one. So that's just how I organize myself. Well, at that point, I just wanted to point out the list of existing plugins and mention what's there and functionality, provide a short overview about functionality we provide in existing plugins. I do want to at least cover the core plugin, but we can then continue with the rest, or we can just, if some of you are working on specific plugins, we can just dive into that area specifically and look into that if there's interest to do that.
More specifically, if you are doing some specific plugins for your own internally or for internal development, and what problems you face, and we could probably solve that or answer questions.
One quick question. Why is QML stuff dependent from C++ plugins?
I don't know the details there. I'm sorry.
The first and the second line hold some QML plugins. And
because I know that. Because I actually work on that. when you open a C++ project, the C++ file can export and expose QML objects and property, and you can register things. And the QML plugin will pick those up. But to pick up the things that you have in your C++, we need to be in the parsing that the C++ does. And so that's why you have this dependency.
Basically, it has to know the C++ code model to access those exposed invocable or exposed QML properties, Q properties.
So let's go to the core plugin first. That does have quite a lot of infrastructure. So I fully recommend, if you want to get seriously into plugin development, I fully recommend checking the core plugin _ export macro and find out what's marked with that one and just check the interfaces. But one thing I'm almost certain you will run into is the action manager. That's the way to get your own custom actions into the menus. Then we do have the document manager and the editor manager, which basically manage, that's a surprise going by the name, the documents and the editors that are open. So, these are separate because you can have documents in multiple viewing. If you have multiple editors viewing the same document and stuff like that. We do have the document model, which is basically what you should use if you want to list all the open files, for example. And we do have some infrastructure classes there, which do not really provide full functionality, but just integration points for other plugins to use, like the help manager, the version control manager. And these are there because we do want to avoid the dependency of that everything that might want to just add a new file needs to depend on the version control plugin. It just depends on the core plugin with the version control manager, and that provides an interface that all the version control systems that will then use, and your projects can just rely on that interface being there and don't have to depend on the version control plugins. Of course, it also brings up the main window, and it does quite a lot of more things. So that's a place you should definitely look into. And something I want to cover a bit more in detail here is the Action Manager, because that's, as I said before, the one area or the one manager you need to use to actually get your actions into the menus of Qt Creator. We do use QAction, but not only. So what you do if you have something or some functionality of yours in the UI, you create a QAction for that, and you connect to that QAction like you always do. But you also need to register that QAction to the Action Manager and provide an ID for what this action does and a context in which this action is relevant. Like this action is only relevant for C++ editing or for QML editing or for other things. And the Action Manager will actually return a command to you. A command is basically a wrapper around all the action implementing the same functionality, which is identified by the ID, and basically switches which action is triggered based on the context the overall UI is in. Is that understandable? Yes?
Could you give an example of such a context, you said, Lee?
I do have one later, but so what this command then provides is basically a proxy action which you can then put in the UI. So all the menus have basically the proxy action from a command, and based on the context you're in, like in a C++ editor or in a QML editor, this action will be forwarded to one of the actions that was to the one action that was registered for the current context, and that one is then triggered. You seem to be nodding, so I hope it's getting a bit lighter there. I have another slide on that, which actually has some code. And that's from the Hello World plugin, which we ship. So the first line basically creates a Q action like you normally do it. And the second one is what you also know as a Qt developer. You actually connect your triggered signal from that action to the slot, say, Hello World. Whatever that does, that's not relevant here. And the next thing is where it gets QCreator specific, because we call the action manager and we register our action, the Hello World action. We provide an ID, like Hello World. Usually takes a plugin name dot something else. And the context, which I'm not showing here, but that's basically the Hello World context, which is in that case bound to a mode. So whenever you're in the Hello World mode, the Hello World context is active. And this command is basically, it has this ID and the proxy action at the top, and it can have one or several Q actions based on how many contexts you register that type of action for. And that's the one that will be in the menus. So this topmost Q action here is the one that will show up in the menus. So that still
Let's see the examples, Hello World example.
Yeah, so let's just look at the hello. Where's my creator? Do I have creator? Oh, no. Let's just open QtCreator, which takes a bit. Come on. So let's go to the Hello World plugin.cpp, where I actually stole the code from. So, and here's the code actually. So here we basically create a context, which is the Hello World, the main view of the Hello World mode. This is where we register the action, and down here we create a new menu. We set a title for that, we enable it, we add our command to that menu, and we grab the tools menu, which is this one here, again from the action manager, and add our Hello World menu there. So when you actually run that, oh my god, I hope it's not building completely now. Okay, that's okay. Seems to have built. No. So let's just enable it here. So the Hello World plugin is of course not enabled by default. So I will just need to enable it here. Oh, it actually is enabled. Cool. So tools. So that's the menu here. The Hello World menu here is actually there. And down here we have the Hello World mode. And when I go there, it says say hello. Is that a bit clearer? Okay. And that's how you actually trigger your dialogues and stuff. Is that clear so far? So, is there any interest to discuss any section or any area of plugins in particular, or should I just continue with some generic overview type of thing? We only have 10 minutes left, so probably a generic overview type of thing is best, I guess. So, the core plugin, so you really should look into that, but the next plugin that are basically going up the tree from the core plugin to the leaves. The locator plugin is the next one there, and that basically has one relevant interface for you to implement or that you can play with, which is the iLocator filter, and that's the entries you see in this whenever you hit Ctrl K. So you can add your custom stuff there if you need that. We have the find plugin that has basically only 2 relevant classes. The first is the iFind support, and you can basically add that to your own widgets and to get the find line and make it get the UI to make it searchable. And there's the iFind filter, which is used in the advanced find to actually set the scope on where you're looking for things. Can you follow me here? Any questions so far? It's pretty trivial. Text editor is a pretty heavy plugin again, or has quite a few interfaces which are of interest. I just want to highlight a few here. The first is of course the iText editor, which is the basis for all text editors in QtCreator. And the base text editor, which the iText editor is the interface, the base text editor is the one basically all other editors inherit from. So these are really interesting to you if you want to work with editors. The next thing in this plugin is iTextMark, and that's used for these little graphics at the side of the line numbers. It's basically the basis for the breakpoints you see, for the bookmarks, for the warning icons you see whenever you have build errors in your code and all that stuff. Another thing that I find personally pretty interesting because you can do really cool stuff with is the quick fix operation and the factory to actually create that in the right moment. And that's what you get whenever you trigger the quick fix menu. All these are basically queried, check whether they are applicable to the current area of text, and then put in the menu. And well, that's something for more specialized use cases. The syntax highlighter, in case you want to implement a new language support, you probably need to implement a syntax highlighter for that language to actually make the surprise syntax highlighting work. Then the next really heavyweight class is the Project Explorer one. And that's basically the basis for all the build system support we have. Also, it has the whole project structure in there, and I will get to that in a bit more detail in the next slide. It also has the tool chains, the managers for those, devices and the device manager, the debugger. No, the debugger is not there. Yeah, those are basically the relevant ones. It has a couple of project nodes, which are basically the entries you see in the projects menu. So all of those are project nodes and specializations of those. So if you want to implement a new build system support or work with, for example, CMake, you will probably run into these. And another interesting class is a task and the task hub, which are so basically all the entries you see in the build issues are tasks, and the way to get them to tell creator there is something new is to pass them to the task hub. So the task hub will then make sure everybody interested in the task will get them. So you don't have to hard code. There's a issues view and only that. So that's why we have the task hub. Questions? And again, there's of course more in this class, so you're invited to poke around in there too. And that's basically our project setup. So what you actually see, I forgot to damn it. Whenever you go to projects mode, that's basically a visualization of that data in our project setup. At the top, we have a project, which is specialized for all the build systems we have. A project can have several targets, which is a concept which is not visible in the UI itself. In the UI, you only have kits, and a target is basically each target has exactly one kit, so that's why we actually don't make those visible in the UI itself. And what the target does in addition to that, it basically has all the pointers to the build configurations, deploy configurations, run configurations that belong to it. And so basically a target is a pointer to a kit and a pointer to a lot of other things. So those don't have to go to the kit. The build configuration, which I shortened here to BC, sorry for that, is what you see here in the build settings view. So all that stuff here. With each build configuration has two lists of build steps. The build steps, the first list is the build step list here. The second one is the clean steps list. You can have more than one, of course. And the build steps themselves, like the qmake and make build step, are basically children of those lists. Also, that's basically this. Actually, do you see my mouse pointer? Oh, that's great. This section here is basically what you see in this build pane. Look. Any questions about this? Oh, great. Yes.
Do you have a possibility to import Visual Studio projects and convert into Qt?
We don't, but we had somebody looking into that for a while, but I don't know what happened with that.
We have a Visual Studio plugin for Qt.
Yeah, we do have a plugin for Visual Studio, but we don't have. We cannot read Visual Studio projects inside Qt Creator. And that was the question. Did I get it? Yeah. Okay. So we had somebody look into that, but it was somebody external, and I never heard from that project again. So.
But it only works for 2008 and 2005 PC Proj files, and our requirement was to execute MS Build using Qt Creator.
Yeah.
But we work with Visual Studio 2010. So right now we're trying to port that plugin to 2010.
Cool.
And
Where
maybe
can I
if
get
it
it?
works.
I need your contact information.
Yeah, maybe it should work. So maybe we can issue a patch, but
that would be really appreciated. So because that's something I would really like to see. So the next area that's in the project tree is basically this area here, and the deployment. And in the object structure, that's this deployment configuration, which has one step or a list of build steps, which you can see here. It's an empty list in that case, but you can basically add new build steps here, so to make those more visible. And the final section in that area here is, of course, the run configuration, which is basically what's going to be run when you click the run button. So that's basically how our projects are structured. Are there questions for that, about this? Oh, cool. The next plugin I want to mention is Qt Support. The most interesting thing here is, of course, a base Qt version, which you can derive your own custom device-specific Qt versions from. And the Qt version manager, which is in the UI visible here in Tools, Objects, Build and Run, and Qt versions. So basically all the information you see here, that's provided by the Qt Support plugin, and that's the basis of all the project plugins which actually have special code for Qt Support. So most of them are by now in a state where you can run them pretty well without Qt. So let's go back. CPP tools, that's where the CPP code model is. Also, we have the CPP model manager interface, the one that you should use, and an implementation for that. And that's where you can basically get all the symbols defined in your project and the loaded projects and all that stuff. And it also has CPP code style preferences for the style settings and all that things.
As we are to the C++ model, is there any update to the state of the Clang-based code model?
No, there's no update yet. It's still work in progress.
It's still on work in progress, I think. Yeah, basically some things with Clang was that it was not as fast as our custom parser, and yeah, the good thing about Qt Creator is that it's pretty fast. We had performance problems with Clang.
is a branch where you have it, and there is the idea of using it for some pieces, especially to support, for example, Objective-C and Objective-C++, which, but work in progress.
So the next plugin that I'm dashing through here is a version control base one. If you want to do support for version control systems we don't support yet, that's where you need to look into. It has a version control base client, which is basically providing interfaces to access the functionality of all the version control system. And something else you might want to look into if you are a bit further along with your version control plugin is a version control base submit editor, which is a widget that's shown when you submit a patch to your version control system. And you might want to customize that a bit for whatever additional information that's not there your version control system needs. And that's my mad dash through Qt Creator interfaces. I only covered a fraction of what we actually have, but in 1 hour you cannot really expect more, I think. I tried to put everything on slides so you can actually find it again and not tell too much out of my head. I want to have some... How much time is left, actually?
2 minutes.
Oh, great. So, some generic advice for plugin writers. I already mentioned it. Don't load unstable plugins in your work environment. It will crash. The plugin name wizard has this trick of the directory name and the project name they must match. I hope we will fix that for maybe even 3.0. The next thing is use namespaces. We will not accept any plugin which is not properly namespaced because that would be polluting the global namespace and that's bad. And check your .ui files because those widgets are put into namespaces if you actually put them there, and if you don't, then they're in the global namespace and they produce really, really weird behavior. I had that once. Check other plugins for inspiration. That's basically the best form of documentation we have at the moment, I'm sorry. And the final piece of advice that I would really want everybody to do, communicate with us. Because our default policy is we keep everything private till somebody asks for it. Because what's private we can change. We don't have any promises for private stuff, of course, because it's private. So we try to keep as much private as possible. Please do not try to patch around and export stuff that we don't export. Just ask us. We are very willing to accommodate your needs. Some more links. That's extending Qt Creator manual I already mentioned to you. That's the URL of that. There's of course a mailing list for all kind of technical questions. Everybody in our office is on IRC all the time too. Well, all the time during work hours, of course. So that's Qt Creator on freenode.net if you need some basically more direct interaction than a mailing list. And that's what I wanted to show to you. And thank you for your attention.